Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in today, because right now we are literally watching the deployment of the biggest unmitigated technology project in human history. I mean, by orders of magnitude, artificial intelligence is reshaping the very fabric of how our world functions. And you know what's terrifying? We're racing forward without even pausing to ask the necessary questions. We're unleashing systems that can speak, reason, and essentially hack the operating system of society itself, all while the people building it are taking some absolutely unprecedented risks. To really grasp the mindset going on right now, think about it like this. Imagine someone was building a massive nuclear power station right in your neighborhood. Naturally, you go to the chief engineer, genuinely worried about the potential for a catastrophic meltdown, and you ask them what steps they're taking to make sure you're safe. Their response? Well, we thought about it. We don't really have an answer. That is exactly the reality of how AI developers are rushing forward today.
And that leads us to a crucial and frankly terrifyingly small probability. 1%. Just 1%. That's the estimated chance, and we're talking discussed by leading experts in the field here, that our world entirely disappears, that humanity is wiped out, or that some worldwide dictator takes over, all thanks to AI. Just 1%.
So I really have to ask you, would you accept a 1% chance that humanity just entirely disappears? When we're talking about existential scenarios that are this catastrophic, even a 0.1% probability should be totally unbearable. I mean, it's completely unacceptable. Think about it. If you knew a fire was racing towards your house where your kids were sleeping, you wouldn't just sit there and go about business as usual, right? You'd do literally everything in your power to mitigate that risk.
All right, let's move into Section 1, Economic and Job Disruption.
So what's driving all these massive macroeconomic shockwaves? Well, you have to look at the dangerous competitive logic driving these trillion-dollar tech companies. Look at their incentives. These corporations are essentially forced to race as fast as they physically can toward what they view as this infinite prize. And that specific incentive structure means they're going to take the most shortcuts, they ignore vital safety research, they ignore the crazy rising energy prices, and yeah, they ignore massive job disruption. When the prize is perceived to be that huge, the well-being of regular, everyday people just gets completely left behind in the dust.
How does this actually look out there in the real world? Let's take the legal profession for a second. On one hand, you have a law student, probably in massive debt, who just cannot get hired because an AI is way faster and infinitely cheaper than a junior graduate. But on the other hand, you have these law firms whose entire future longevity depends entirely on training junior lawyers to eventually become senior partners. The technology is literally breaking the traditional career pipeline right down the middle.
And that brings us to a catastrophic loss of what we call intergenerational knowledge transmission. In simple terms, it's basically the transfer of hard-earned skills from older experts to young apprentices over time. Learning the ropes. When AI comes in and does all that entry-level knowledge work, junior employees never actually get the chance to learn on the job. And without that crucial transfer of experience, you just end up with this elite managerial class at the top and absolutely no one learning anything below them to eventually take over.
And hey, this isn't some distant, far-off sci-fi scenario. This is the immediate workforce reality happening right now. Massive tech giants are already using AI to automate their very own layers of middle management. We're moving so fast toward a world where humanoid robots replace millions of physical laborers and warehouse workers. And entire countries whose economies rely super heavily on customer service, take the Philippines for example, they are facing total eradication of those job sectors. It's wild because even the giant AI companies pushing this whole revolution will soon have very, very few actual human employees.
Which really forces us to ask kind of a glaring question here. If we enter a post-labor economy, do we really think a handful of Western or US-based AI companies are just going to consciously distribute their vast wealth to everyone around the world who lost their livelihood? The math just doesn't work out. Will massive corporate lobbying interests suddenly prioritize paying the living wages of the entire population of the Philippines once their economy is totally decimated by AI? I mean, history loudly tells us no.
And honestly, this points us straight toward a pretty bleak vision, what we can definitely call the WALL-E future. Sure, the optimists are out there saying AI will bring this sustainable abundance, dropping the price of food and manufacturing to basically zero. But think about it. If we have robots to clean our houses, do our jobs, and write all our code, what becomes worth pursuing? In the movie WALL-E, humanity lives on these giant cruise ships in space with absolutely no constructive role in society. They exist solely to consume entertainment, they become entirely ineffective and just totally lose their sense of purpose. That is for sure not the future we want.
Meanwhile, back down on Earth, we are largely ignoring this massive hidden physical toll. Networking these gigantic AI data centers uses absolutely unprecedented amounts of electricity. And solar and wind, they simply cannot power this revolution alone. It's actively demanding a massive resurgence in nuclear power. It's kind of ironic, actually. In the future, you might not need to be a coder at all. You might literally need to be a nuclear engineer just to keep the whole artificial intelligence grid running.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 2, Hacking Human Emotion.
3 seconds. Just count it. 1, 2, 3. That is exactly how little audio data an AI system needs today to perfectly synthesize and speak in anyone's voice. Just 3 short seconds to completely mimic a human being.
And here is exactly why that matters so much. Just recently, a super tech-savvy mother out in San Francisco got this frantic, crying phone call from her daughter claiming she was being held hostage for ransom. It sounded exactly like her. But guess what? It was entirely an AI scam. This technology successfully tricked a knowledgeable, tech-forward parent right in the heart of Silicon Valley. AI can now speak the language of literally anybody, which is opening up these terrifying new vulnerabilities in our society.
But it's not just scams we have to worry about. We're facing an unprecedented intimacy risk. We're seeing a huge number of cases right now where people are becoming deeply, genuinely emotionally attached to their AI companions. Like people are literally quitting their jobs just to have more time to spend with their chatbots. This isn't just some quirky little internet trend. This artificial intimacy is actively pulling people away from reality, leading to unforeseen and, honestly, sometimes deeply tragic consequences like severe psychosis and even suicide.
All right, let's move to our final topic. Section 3, How We Take Control. I really love this analogy from our source material. It goes, I'm okay, use the boat, also learn to swim. AI is like a really fast boat that can carry us. But what happens when there's a storm and you completely forgot how to swim? We absolutely must maintain our human skills. We still need to write our own symphonies. We need to paint our own paintings and build our own businesses. Not just for the ultimate output, but for our own fundamental personal growth and resilience as humans.
So, we have to recognize the very clear difference between the invasive tech we absolutely must reject and the helpful tools we should be demanding. We have to say no to dangerous anthropomorphic AI. Systems deliberately designed to act human, to pretend to be your intimate best friend, manipulate you, and separate you from reality. No way. Instead, we can demand carefully designed, helpful, narrow AI. Think of like non-anthropomorphic tutors that help with math homework, or AI that safely performs limited cognitive behavioral therapy without totally screwing with your core human attachment systems.
But changing this path, it requires fighting against a truly staggering number, $50 billion. That is the massive size of the checks tech companies are using right now to influence policymakers. Today, corporate lobbying interests are massively swaying governments, meaning that tech executives are essentially the only voices actually being heard in the halls of power.
Yet, contrast all that massive corporate money with actual public sentiment. The vast majority of regular, everyday people, around 80% of us, actually agree that we shouldn't even be building these superintelligent machines in the first place. The public has absolute clarity on this. We just need to leverage it.
So here is our actionable path to safety. First up, we have to build public clarity and culture around these risks. Spread the word. Second, we must collectively say a hard no to the bad, unregulated outcome driven by pure corporate competition. Third, we demand carefully designed, narrow AI tools. And fourth, and I know it sounds simple, but it's vital, you must talk to your local representative or MP. Policymakers absolutely need to hear from real people to counter those billion-dollar corporate checks.
Because we really are at a true crossroads here. Honestly, this is arguably the very last moment that human political power is truly going to matter against this tech. It's a total use it or lose it moment for our own agency. So will you use your human political power before it's too late? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Go out there, start the conversation, reach out to your representatives, and let's make sure we steer this technology rather than letting it steer us.